The blizzard had closed every road. I dragged my half-frozen body home. The moment the door opened, breathy, intimate sounds drifted from the bedroom. Two tangled silhouettes so familiar I almost laughed. It wasn't the first time he'd cheated, but it was the first time they'd desecrated the home we'd shared for 5 years. I didn't charge in, didn't scream. I simply sat on the sofa, listening to the noises behind that door, counting the seconds. Strangely, I felt nothing. No anger, no sorrow, just a hollow calm. Only when the sound stopped did it hit me. I had already fallen out of love with Xavier. All that remained was settling the score. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. I don't know how much time passed before the bedroom finally went quiet. After the hush of running water, Xavier walked out in a towel. Seeing me, he arched an eyebrow. No guilt at being caught, only irritation. Thought you were spending New Year's at your parents' in upstate New York. Why the early comeback? He was annoyed I'd spoiled his fun. If I could have left on the spot, I would have, but the blizzard raged outside and exhaustion had hollowed me out. Roads were closed, so I turned back. I said, my gaze drifting to the red marks on his skin, each bruise burning like an accusation before I forced myself to look away. Noticing my stare, Xavier frowned. I didn't want you seeing this. You're the one who came home early. He stepped closer, his voice laced with warning. Brielle scares easy. I advise you not to do anything extreme, or I won't let it slide. He expected the usual hysterics, but I was done. Every past fight had drained me. I had no strength left for scenes. I said nothing, only gave a bitter smile. The next second, Brielle padded out of the bedroom, wearing my silk nightgown, her seaweed dark hair spilling over her waist. Xavier, I'm freezing. Warm me up, she purred, coiling around him like a snake. His eyes softened instantly. He patted her head, then shielded her behind him, as if I might lunge. Good girl, go back inside, he murmured. I don't want to, Brielle whined, clinging tighter, but when she spotted me on the sofa, she squealed and ducked behind Xavier, playing the docile, harmless rabbit, her shy gaze flicking toward me. Only I knew the calculating schemes hidden beneath that soft mask. Xavier would never believe me. Go on, I'll handle this, he told her, his tone gentle as silk, a tenderness that stabbed at my eyes. Brielle obeyed, and the moment before the door closed, I caught the triumph in her stare. Brielle's folks still live on a farm in Iowa. She's a fragile girl, and it's New Year's Eve. I couldn't leave her alone, Xavier said, rubbing his brow. Fondness and helplessness tangled in his voice. We'd grown up together in Westchester. Everyone called him cold-blooded, yet with me, he'd once had bottomless patience and warmth. Now, after years of erosion, not a sliver of that warmth remained. Do you remember the birthday gift you gave me when I turned 18? I asked, my eyes lowered as if the memory were a faint whisper. Xavier said nothing. Work, clients, endless distractions had long shelved our promises and our past. You promised you'd spend every New Year's Eve with me. This year, you said you were too busy. If the blizzard hadn't trapped me, I'd never have learned that the husband too busy for me was toasting midnight with another woman in our house. For a second, Xavier faltered, a crack in his unfeeling mask, but he shook it off as if brushing away a nuisance. When he looked at me again, disgust was undisguised. So, how are you going to make a scene this time? Scarlett, you know how annoying your tantrums are. I didn't cry, didn't flinch, yet the pain carved deep. More than 20 years of love, even after deciding to let go, had become instinct. I won't hurt her. Xavier, don't worry, I said, my voice thick with tangled feelings. He exhaled, relieved, and sat beside me. The cushion dipped, his familiar scent flooding my lungs. He pinched the bridge of his nose, his voice weary. In our world, almost every man has a mistress. All these years, I only brought her home today. Isn't that enough? As long as you behave and don't act out, I guarantee you'll stay Mrs. Shaw, bathed in luxury, never wanting for anything. You're smart, Scarlett. You know the right choice. I smiled. I'd never cared about being a society matron. All I'd ever wanted was Xavier himself. Now I understood that was a promise he could never keep. Once, I'd have screamed the house down, but now I knew a heart no longer in love couldn't be reclaimed by pleas or tears. So be it. I retreated to my room and faced the grand piano, centered there like a monument. Tears finally fell. I'd once been Westchester's piano prodigy, but for Xavier, I'd shelved my dream to focus on grocery lists and meal plans. I laid my fingers on the cold keys, the chill snapping my mind awake. It was time to end this. Day after day, I practiced. One evening, Xavier came home surprisingly early, seeing me at the piano. He frowned. Why waste time on that again? again. You could have cooked instead. Xavier's stomach was delicate, his palate picky. I'd always cooked for him myself, never trusting the housekeeper. But since Brielle appeared, he hadn't dined at home once. You wouldn't eat it anyway, so why bother? I shot back. Xavier looked as if the words had choked him. He forced down his impatience and kept his voice even. But I'm here now. Scarlett, cook me something. I'm starving. I didn't lift an eyelid, my fingers still racing across the keys. I didn't know you'd be home early. If you're hungry, ask Jake to fix you something. After a beat, I added, I don't have the time. He clearly hadn't expected a frozen wall. He didn't leave, didn't call Jake, just stood in the doorway, dumbstruck. Finally, he spoke again. Scarlett, you've changed. There was a trace of grievance in his tone, as if denying him a home-cooked meal were a crime. He'd forgotten I'd once loved him more than anything, and he was the one who'd turned me into this. Xavier pulled out his phone, lighting up our chat log. You haven't messaged me in ages. Before, you'd ask when I'd be off work, what I wanted for dinner. Now you don't even check in. I glanced at the screen. My last text was a week ago. I hadn't realized he ever scrolled back. He never replied, so I'd assumed he never looked. What's the point? The answer's always the same, I said, walking over to the door. Just as he thought I might reach for him, I grabbed the handle. Xavier, you're not a kid. If you're hungry, find Jake, not me. With that, I slammed the door and locked him out. The next afternoon, Madison dragged me shopping in Manhattan. By the time we got back, dusk had settled. I pushed open the door to find our clean, cavernous living room strung with streamers. Dead center, giant glitter letters shouted, Happy birthday, Princess Brielle. A crowd ringed the sofa, laughter bouncing off the walls, while I stood clutching shopping bags like an outsider. My knuckles whitened around the handles, annoyed, resigned. Xavier had sworn he wouldn't parade Brielle through the house again, yet here she was, celebrating in my home before his promise had cooled. Birthday bashes demand booze. Someone tried to toast Brielle, but Xavier blocked the glass before it touched her lips. She can't hold her liquor. I'll drink for her. A chorus of oohs and ahs erupted. Brielle hid behind him, her cheeks scarlet as a rose. My own birthday flashed through my mind, how I'd waved off friends, cooked a full table, and waited for Xavier until dawn. He never texted. When I finally called, Brielle's whimper had come through the line. Xavier, you're hurting me. I don't remember how I survived that night, only that the darkness felt endless. At someone's nudge, Xavier noticed me in the doorway. The room's temperature plummeted, heads dropped, gazes glued to the floor, while Xavier frowned, probably blaming me for ruining Brielle's moment. Brielle, unruffled, glided over with a fancy cake, her smile perfect. Big sis, last time at your place, I know it was awkward, so I begged Xavier to let me throw my party here, so you could join the fun. I heard you don't have many friends and spend birthdays alone. If you don't mind, you can share mine. Here, sis, is birthday cake for you. Hope it's not too humble. Her tone reeked of charity. She'd miscalculated. I'm a Vance. I give. I don't take scraps. I stepped back, refusing the plate, but Brielle pressed on, forcing it toward me. Her heel wobbled, and globs of cloying frosting smeared across my face. Laughter exploded. Brielle lingered, making no move to help. Oops, didn't mean to. My intentions were good. You won't hold it against me, right? Xavier stayed silent, as if none of it concerned him. I'd once swallowed every insult because I loved him, but love was gone. No homewrecker got to walk all over me. Smack. My palm flew, landing hard on Brielle's cheek. Chaos erupted. Xavier, suddenly no longer a bystander, yanked Brielle behind him. Scarlett, have you lost it? I warned you repeatedly not to make scenes. It's Brielle's birthday, ruin it and you'll regret it. He shielded her, solid as a wall, while my frosting-covered humiliation didn't merit a glance. I snatched a tissue and wiped the sugar away. The sweetness stung my eyes. They watered despite me, noticing the red rims. Xavier hesitated, then Brielle reclaimed his attention. She played the resilient ingenue, clutching his hand. Don't quarrel with sis because of me. I stumbled. It's my fault. I hate causing trouble between you. He sighed, hugging her in pity. Brielle, you're too considerate. Then, as if tossing alms, he turned to me. Scarlett, I'm not asking much. Just get along with her. Is that impossible? Priceless. This was the 21st century, and he wanted wife and mistress to live in harmony. What era did he think this was? I said nothing, just swung my bag onto my shoulder and walked out. I had to leave. Nothing else mattered. I didn't get far before metal screeched against asphalt, and the world went black. I awoke in a hospital room in Manhattan. Xavier's eyes were bloodshot. Who knew how long he'd kept vigil? When my lashes fluttered, bright relief flashed across his face. Scarlett, thank God you're awake. You scared me to death. Pain nailed me to the mattress. I stared at him, mute. He wasn't in a rush for once. He lifted a takeout bowl of steaming congee and spooned it gently to my lips. The familiar scent hit me instantly. I knew it was the breakfast Xavier used to make himself. Back when we were 18. Back when he still loved me fiercely. He'd cooked for me almost every morning. Later, though, I'd been the one standing at the stove, and he'd never come home to eat a single bite. Scarlett, while you were in surgery, I thought about everything. We've been each other's world for so long, no one could ever replace that. I was wrong before. I see that now. Scarlett, believe me, I'll never let Brielle show up in front of you again. Okay, huh? Endless sarcasm welled up inside me. Even now, he dared not promise to cut Brielle off for good. Just like last time, he could only assure me she wouldn't appear in my sight. I'd always believed the thread between two people was finite. Every fight, every disappointment, frayed it a little more. That's exactly what had happened to Xavier and me. The thread could no longer hold our marriage together. Xavier, my voice was hoarse, but my tone was steel. Let's get a divorce. As expected, Xavier refused. He didn't even take the word divorce seriously. Ever since Brielle had appeared, I'd said it countless times. He assumed this was just another bout of petty temper. For the next week, he arrived at the hospital every morning carrying porridge he'd cooked. Playing the part of a devoted husband, he showered me with gifts and surprises. The way a man courts a girl he hasn't yet won. But for 7 straight days, he couldn't coax a single smile from me. Xavier was no longer the awkward boy of our past. As CEO of Shaw Enterprises, he had money, looks, and a never-ending entourage. Why waste so much time and energy on me? Just as I predicted, after a week, his passion fizzled. He stopped showing up entirely. I discharged myself alone and rode home in silence. We slid into a cold war. I spent my days in the music room, while Xavier scarcely set foot in the house. Brielle, restless once she heard we were icing each other out, began bombarding me with texts, hoping to provoke me into giving up the title of Mrs. Shaw. One day it would be a cozy selfie of her and Xavier at a Hamptons beach house. The next a photo of a six-figure necklace he'd fastened around her throat. But I wasn't the woman I used to be. Those images didn't wound me. They only reinforced how lucky I was to escape such a toxic game. When my silence never cracked, Brielle finally stopped. Xavier, however, lost his composure. One pre-dawn hour, his assistant called. Mrs. Shaw, the president's drunk and insisting on seeing you. Could you pick him up? Once upon a time, I would have dropped everything and run to him. Now, I glanced at the season finale of my favorite show on TV and answered lazily, I'm busy, find someone else. I hung up and kept watching. Yet barely 20 minutes later, the supposedly drunk Xavier walked in, freshly showered. No trace of alcohol on his breath, and planted himself on the sofa beside me. Thought you were busy. His tone was flat, but I knew him. He was furious. The show's about to end, I replied, implying he ranked lower than a television drama. Several times, he opened his mouth, met my glacial stare, and swallowed his words. In the end, he said nothing and retreated to the bedroom. After the credits rolled, I headed for bed, and brushed against Xavier's warm body. We'd been living separately for months. He'd claimed my presence disturbed his insomnia, and had moved my things to the guest room. Now the man who demanded space was invading mine. Scarlett, I miss you so much, he whispered, pulling me against him. The heat of his skin made me recoil, but his arms felt glued in place. I dreamed you divorced me. Don't leave me, please. Scarlett, give me a child. His hand settled on my waist. The burning touch made me squirm away. Don't touch me, I said, my eyes arctic, stripped of all adoration. Hurt flickered across his face, his voice turning husky. Scarlett, we're husband and wife. I cut him off without mercy. You know exactly what you do with her. You disgust me. Watching the blood drain from his face, I inhaled and repeated, Xavier, we're getting divorced. We grew up together. Scarlett, no one shares what we have. Are you really ready to throw it all away? He lowered his head like an abandoned puppy. I simply smiled, opened the nightstand, and pulled out a notebook. Read it. When you're done, you'll understand why divorce is the only option. For 2 years, every time he cheated, I'd recorded it. The nights he claimed overtime while in another woman's bed. The afternoon he brought a mistress into our home. The lost wedding bands. The forgotten birthdays. Each betrayal earned an entry, written through tears. Once, I'd been the devoted childhood sweetheart who forgave everything, but the pages were now full just like my heart, numbed by endless hurt. Love is a consumable. Neglect it, and it runs out. Mine finally had. Xavier's hands shook as he read, clutching the notebook. He wept like a child. Scarlett, why didn't you tell me you were hurting this much? Hadn't I? I'd screamed, begged, cried, laid my heart bare for him to see, but he'd ignored me again and again. This wreckage was his doing. I took a pill bottle from my purse and emptied every tablet onto the bed. For the last 2 years, I've swallowed these every single day, and not once did you ask what they were. Xavier froze. He stared at the white tablets and answered on reflex. They're just regular vitamins. The words died halfway. He looked bewildered. Scarlett, are you sick? I'm way past sick. I snapped. Xavier, I have severe clinical depression. Did you even know? His gaze skittered away. He stepped back, as if my eyes burned. You should have told me sooner. If I'd known, I never would have treated you like that. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Tell you, even if I'd shouted it from the rooftops, you still wouldn't have cared. I lifted my sweater, revealing a long, jagged surgical scar across my abdomen. Look at this. Xavier, there was a child here, yours. Because of you, it's gone. And you still dare ask me for another baby. How could? Disbelief cracked his voice. Tears rolled from the eyes that once sparkled with certainty. Of course he hadn't known. The day I'd gotten the positive test, he'd been busy throwing Brielle a birthday party. I found out I was pregnant and drove alone to surprise you. The blizzard closed every road, and I crashed. I tried to call you, again and again. You finally picked up just as my phone was dying. What I heard wasn't your voice. It was Brielle's taunt. She said you were celebrating her birthday and probably wouldn't come home. Then asked if I wanted to join. Xavier, do you have any idea how it felt? I watched our baby bleed out while its father partied with another woman. I spent a week in the hospital. You never called, never asked how I was. What were you doing that week? Did a single second of it include a thought of me? His whole body shook. The titan who terrified boardrooms couldn't form a sentence. He reached to hold me, then jerked his hands back, as if I were broken. I'm not telling you this for pity, and certainly not to save our marriage. You've known me long enough. When I loved you, I loved with everything I had. Now that love is dead, and nothing can bring it back. Xavier, let me go. I thought pride alone would make him agree. Instead, he covered his face, sank to the floor, and stayed there a long time. Finally, he stood and gently cupped my cheek. I was wrong. Scarlett, give me one chance to make it right. Don't bring up the divorce again. Hate me if you must, but give me a week. I'll fix everything. He looked at me with the same tender awe he'd had the day he'd shyly asked me to be his girlfriend. But we couldn't go back. I didn't answer. I simply ushered him out and shut the door. If he wouldn't sign the papers, I'd act first. I had proof of his affairs. At worst, we'd battle in court. The penthouse was his. I didn't want it. At dawn, while he still slept, I packed my things and left. Years ago, I'd bought a small apartment in Brooklyn. Now it finally served its purpose. I decorated it warm and bright, soft yellows instead of the cold grays he loved. When everything was in place, I checked my phone. Dozens of missed calls, and texts longer than every message he'd sent in 5 years of marriage. Once, that flood would have thrilled me. Now it only gave me a headache. Without reading them, I blocked his number. He still found the building. He'd leave before sunrise, return after midnight, just loitering downstairs. I dodged him as best I could, but eventually, we collided, red-eyed. He caught my sleeve. Scarlett, why hide? Do you know how long I've waited? A week? Unbearable for him. He'd left me waiting for 2 years. I've said it. I want a divorce. We don't need to meet, I said, pulling my arm free. Tears clung to his lashes. Walk with me one last time. Call it a farewell gift. Please. I wouldn't pity him, but his stalling was hurting me too. Better to finish this. Fine. I rode in his passenger seat as we drove from South Boston to North End. At every corner, he tried to resurrect memories. Scarlett, Westchester High, everyone knew we were the golden couple. Remember, the campus had been renovated beyond recognition. Who clung to dusty anecdotes? Scarlett, Central Park Memorial Park, you'd go there whenever you were upset. I followed you every single time, hiding behind the hedges. We were so good together. Don't you miss it even a little? I turned away, no answer, no eye contact. He parked outside Pop's diner, the greasy spoon we'd loved as teens. Scarlett, share one last meal. I stepped out and stared at the familiar storefront, my throat tightening. Same cracked linoleum, same scent of chili oil, still perfect. After marriage, he'd never come back. His calendar was always too full for his wife. What he'd never realized, I'd returned alone to every one of these places, the school, the park, this diner, countless times. The owner spotted me, back again. Before he could finish, he saw Xavier standing behind me, as if a celebrity had arrived. He exclaimed, well, look who's here. finally decided to show up. Young man, it's been years since you last set foot in here. Your girlfriend, on the other hand, used to come by herself all the time. Xavier went silent, his fingers clenched so tight his knuckles whitened before he slowly relaxed. Scarlett, did you really come here alone that often? I slid into a booth and waved a careless hand. Ancient history. If you hadn't dragged me here today, I doubt I'd ever have come back. At last, fear flickered in Xavier's eyes. His face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing, yet no words came. Stop wasting energy on pointless pleas. We've known each other too long, let's end this with a little dignity. Have the divorce papers ready soon, or we'll see each other in court. We signed the papers in the end. 2 small booklets witnessing the death of a love story that had lasted over 20 years. The day we parted, I drove off alone and never once looked back. There were plenty of days ahead, and this time, I meant to live them for myself. Ever since I was a child, my dream had been to become a concert pianist. A failed marriage had shackled me for years. Now it was time to reclaim that dream. I threw myself into practice and, on friends' recommendations, began preparing to study abroad in Vienna. Before I left, a few close friends threw me a farewell dinner. Everyone tactfully left Xavier off the guest list. Yet somehow he heard about it and showed up. Barely half a month had passed, but he looked years older, unshaven, his eyes haggard with exhaustion. Spotting me, he pushed past the people trying to stop him and strode over. Scarlett, do you really have to leave the country? I stepped back, keeping a polite distance, my smile cool and distant. Of course, Mr. Shaw, and I don't see how it concerns you. Don't forget, we're divorced. Those 2 words stabbed deep. Xavier's face twisted in pain, his whole body trembling. Scarlett, please don't go. I miss you so damn much. The moment the plea left his lips, a commotion erupted outside. Moments later, Brielle, long unseen, burst in. She zeroed in on Xavier and rushed straight at him. Xavier, where have you been? I've searched everywhere for you. Every guest in the room was polished and well-mannered. Brielle behaved like a wild child, shouting over the disdainful stares. Xavier's expression darkened instantly. He spun around and flung her hand away without mercy. How many times do I have to say it? We're done. Stop hounding me. Then he whipped back to me, frantic. Scarlett, believe me, I cut her off ages ago. She's the one clinging on. You're the only one in my heart. Listening to him, I felt no satisfaction, only endless irony. Once, he'd humiliated me in front of everyone. Tonight, he could strip Brielle of her dignity just as easily. Xavier had always been selfish, arrogant, he'd never changed. Only now did I fully grasp how right I'd been to leave him. Brielle sprawled on the floor, her face burning scarlet under the pointing fingers and whispers. Stop staring. I'm going to be Mrs. Shaw. Cross me and you'll pay. We all knew she'd never wear that title. She belonged to a different world. And after disgracing herself like this, the Shaw family would never accept her. A few sycophants sidled up to trample her while praising me. I merely smiled and said nothing. None of it concerned me anymore. A few days later, Xavier came knocking again. I opened the door to find him with bloodshot eyes, looking utterly exhausted. Is there something you need? My tone was distant, as if the man standing there were a stranger. His lips quivered. Only after a long pause did he manage to speak. Friends told me you're leaving. I just wanted to see you. All right, I said with a nod. You've seen me. Now please go. I still have packing to finish. Yet he stubbornly blocked the door, like a child terrified of abandonment. His eyes red as he asked, Scarlett, can you please stay? I swear I won't bother you. I'll watch from afar. Can't you allow even that? I gave a cold laugh. Mr. Shaw, you're mistaken. This trip has nothing to do with you. I'm chasing my dream of becoming a pianist. I'm busy. Goodbye. Maybe we'll meet again someday. With that, I closed the door without mercy. Outside, Xavier stood for a long time. Only after I'd finished packing did I hear his heavy footsteps retreat. The next day, just before I boarded my flight, a friend called. Scarlett, normally I wouldn't trouble you, but a life is on the line. I think you deserve to decide, though I already knew who it was about. I said, tell me. My friend continued. Xavier crashed on the way to the airport to see you off. He's in intensive care. Will you come? He needs a doctor. Not me. My voice was ice, as if the man fighting for his life were a stranger. My friend hesitated, then hung up. I wheeled my suitcase onto the plane bound for Vienna and set off to chase my piano dream. Later, I learned the crash hadn't been an accident. Brielle, humiliated and enraged, had tampered with the brakes of his car. The wreck left Xavier paralyzed, confined to a wheelchair for life. As for Brielle, such a grave crime ensured neither the police nor the Shaw family would let her go free. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. I had more important things ahead. The future was bright, wasn't it? Thanks for listening to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and share. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more tales. See you next time.